Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's case I'm going to be talking to you about is Tilly Devine. So Tilly Devine was born Matilda Twist, 8th of September 1900s in Camberwell in London. She had died on 24th of November 1970 at age 70. The Concord Repatriation Hospital in Sydney, New South Wales. Her burial place is Eastern Suburbs Memorial Park. Her nationality is English Australian. The other names she goes by is Queen of Woolloomooloo. Occupation is a crime boss. The years active was 1920s to 1950s. She is known for a famous Sydney folk figure of the interwar period. She is involved in razor gangs, Madame Slygrog's supplies. Her spouses was James Edward Joseph and Jim Devine, which was in 1970 born and then died on 1944. Eric John Parsons was 1945 to 1958. Children is Frederick Ralph Twist. Parents is Edward Twist and Alice Twist as well. So Matilda Mary Devine was known as Tilly Devine. She was an English-Australian organised crime boss. She was involved in a wide range of activities including slygrog, razor gangs and prostitution, and became a famous folk figure in Sydney during the interwar years. Devine was born as a daughter of a bricklayer to Edward Twist and Alice Twist at 57 Hollington Street in Camberwell, London in the United Kingdom. At age 16, she married an Australian serviceman, James, which is called Jim Edward Joseph Devine, born Brunswick, Victoria, 1892, and died in Heidelberg in Victoria, 18th of August 1966. On 12th of April 1917 at the Church of Sacred Heart of Jesus in Camberwell, London. The couple had one son, Frederick Ralph Twist, that was born in Camberwell. In Southwark in London in 1990. Her career in prostitution began when she was a teenager and continued after she was married. She and many English women were usually found soliciting on wide footpaths on the Strand, and this was at night times from 1915 onwards to 1919. She spent time at Bow Street Court and lockup for prostitution, theft and assault. When Jim returned to Australia, she followed him back onto the Bride ship in Weymouth, arriving in Sydney on 13th of January 1920. Her son stayed in London and was brought up by her parents. Both Tilly and Jim Devine rapidly became very prominent illegal narcotic dealers, brothel owners and crime gang members in Sydney criminal milieu. Tilly Devine, known as the Queen of Woolloomooloo, ran a string of brothels centred around Darlinghurst and the Cross, and in particular Palmer Street. Kate Lee was known as the Queen of Surrey Hills, was a sly grogger and fence for a stolen property. By 1925, Tilly was well known to the police. In 5 years, she had accumulated a long list, and this was of convictions. The numerous offences range from common prostitute to indecent language, offensive behaviour and assault. The police report is a snapshot of the life that Tilly was leading up to 1925, a life that was involved in working on the streets at night, clashes with police and lots of parties and heavy drinking. Devine became infamous in Sydney, initially as a prostitute, then later as a brothel madame and organised crime entrepreneur. The NSW Vagrancy Act 1905 had prohibited men from running any brothels. It did nothing to stop women with criminal gang support and bribes to the police from running criminal enterprises. Historian Larry Reiter had noted that the Devines ran diverse field operations the elite called the call girls, were available for politicians, businessmen, and overseas guests of significance, while tenement girls were young workers' class women who resorted to casual prostitution to supplement their drugs in spending, clothes, Viagra earning during times of Australian criminal and narcotic cultures, absence of a comprehensive welfare state, and unemployment. Older female prostitutes, called the boat girls, catered around the illiterate sailors or working class men. Devine does not seem to have run similar operations for the gay sex market during this time because she believed that it was not right. Devine's wealth was legendary. Although it was all earned from crime, she owned much real estate in Sydney, many luxury cars, looted gold and diamond jewellery, and travelled by ship in first-class staterooms. Much of her wealth was also used to pay bribes to the police sectors and fines for her criminal convictions that spanned 50 years. Devine faced numerous court summons and was convicted on 204 occasions during her long career in the criminal side. They served then many jail sentences in New South Wales jails, many for prostitution, violent assaults, affray, and attempted murder. She was known to the police to be a violent nature and was known to use firearms, and James Edward Joseph, which was known as Jim Devine, was a World War I ex-serviceman, and Shearer, who was a violent standover man, a convicted thief, a pimp, drug dealer, a vicious thug, and a gunman. He was also an alcoholic. Devine had committed a number of high-profile murders in Sydney between 1929 and 1931, notably the murder of criminal George Leonard, called Gregory Gaffney, on 17th of July 1929. Secondly, as an accessory to the murder of Bonnie Dalton on 9th of November 1929, with the infamous Sydney gangster and assassin Francis Donald Frankie Green. And thirdly, the accidental shooting of a taxi driver, Frederick Herbert Moffat, on 16th of June 1931. Although he was charged with murder on more than one occasion, he was always acquitted successfully, arguing self-defense. He shot and killed Gaffney and Moffat outside his and Tilly's Maroubra residence. Tilly and Jim Devine's marriage was marred by a domestic violence. So on 9th of January 1931, Jim was charged at Central Police Court with the attempted murder of his wife. This was after a very heated argument at the Maroubra home. As Tilly ran out of the house, Jim fired a number of shots at her in a similar way to the murder of George Leonard Gaffney in 1929. Tilly escaped unscathed, and only damage being one of her brand new stilettos, and this was the left one. The terrified neighbours called the police, resulting in Jim being arrested and charged over the incident. He was later acquitted on 16th of January 1931 because Tilly refused to testify. The Devines separated in the early 1940s and were finally divorced in January 1944. Shortly after Tilly separated from Jim, longtime criminal associate Donald Alexander Kenny, 1906 to 1963, known as Skinny Kenny, became Tilly's lover and standover man. Devine married for the second time on 19th of May 1945 to her ex-seaman and returned serviceman, which was Eric John Parsons, born in Melbourne 1901, died in Sydney 1958. Tilly famously shot Parsons in the leg after an argument only months before they were married. This shooting occurred at the other Sydney residence, 191 Palmer Street, Darlinghurst. The house was almost opposite the notorious Tradesman Arms Hotel, and was the hotel that Devine met Eric Parsons. She was arrested by police and charged with shooting, but was acquitted at a trial on 31st of March 1945. They were happily married for 13 years until Eric Parsons had died. and this was of cancer on 22nd November 1958. For over 30 years, Devine lived at 335 Malabar Road in Maroubra in Sydney's southeastern suburb. A number of homicides were committed at this residence. The property remained derelict from the 1950s onwards. It was sold then in 2009, and the new owner built a new house on the lot. Although Devine had been one of Sydney's wealthiest women by 1955, the taxation department ordered her to pay more than £20,000 in unpaid income tax and fines, sending her close to bankruptcy. In 1953, Devine boasted to the media, quote, "I am a lucky, lucky girl. I have more diamonds than the Queen of England stowaways, and better ones too." She sold off her last brothel in Palmer Street in Darlinghurst in 1968, and she died 2 years later. Devine was famous for flamboyant acts of generosity and also for a violent feud with the criminal vice rival Kate Lee. Devine was charged by the famous Sydney detective Frank Farrell on many occasions, and they feud at last for 30 years. Devine had suffered from chronic bronchitis, and this was for 20 years, and died of cancer at aged 70 at the Concord Repetition Hospital in Sydney on 24th of November 1970. A funeral service was held at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Darlinghurst. She was cremated at Botany Crematorium, known as Eastern Suburbs Memorial Park, on 26th of November 1970, with a Catholic rite by her married name, Matilda Mary Parsons. She was survived by her son Frederick Ralph Devine Twist, 1990 to 1978, and 2 grandchildren. Her funeral service was poorly attended and her death went virtually unnoticed, and this was by Sydney's media and population, as it was said that very few people openly mourned her death. The only public eulogy offered to Devine was given by then the Police Commissioner Norman Allen, who had said she was a villain. But who am I to judge her? Peter Kenner wrote a play called The Slaughter of Centuries a Day, 1973, Currency Press, where the lead character was based on Devine. The song Miss Devine from the 1919 Icehouse album Code Blue is about Devine. A popular cafe nightclub in Lyneham in Canberra is called Tilly's Devine Cafe Gallery, and there is also a wine bar that is in Darlinghurst, Sydney, that opened in 2011, named Love Tilly Devine in honour of Devine. In August 2011, Australia's Channel 9 commenced screening Underbelly, Razor, a true crime television drama series that deals with the Lee and the Devine Sydney gangland wars in the 1930s. The series was based on Ned Kelly award-winning book by Larry Writer. Devine was portrayed by Chelsea Preston Crayford, who was nominated for a Logie Award for Most Popular New Female Talent. Devine is a background character in Kerry Greenwood's Death Before Wicket, the 10th Frying Fisher novel, which is set in Sydney in 1928. Okay then everyone, so that is today's case. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you again next time. Take care.